4 years after the conquest, Aegon Targaryen started the First Dornish War, during which he attempted to bring the Dornish under Targaryen rule. A bloody war during which Queen Aenys Targaryen was supposedly killed together with her dragon, Meraxes, at Hellholt. The First Dornish War lasted for 9 years and eventually ended after a visit from Princess Deria Martell, the daughter of Prince Naemor Martell, the ruling Prince of Dorne. She brought the skull of Meraxes and a letter with her, which was given to Aegon. Though the contents of the letter have never been revealed, after reading the letter, Aegon flew on Valyrian to Dragonstone. He returned the next day and agreed to a peace between Dorne and his kingdom. Aegon would keep up good relations with Princess Daria and is known to have visited Sunspear together with his eldest son, Aenys. The remaining years of Aegon's reign were peaceful. He spent much of his time consolidating his power by traveling throughout the Seven Kingdoms and building his capital at King's Landing. During his rule, he tread carefully with the faith of the Seven, so they would not oppose him. Aegon built a grand sept on Visenya's Hill and agreed to the construction of an even grander one, known as the Sept of Remembrance, on Rhaenys' Hill. 7 years after the conquest, Aegon became a father for the first time, when his younger sister-wife Rhaenys gave birth to a son, Aenys. However, Aenys was a sickly boy and Rhaenys' death shattered him. Aegon grew desperate and there were worries about whether or not Aenys would even live. He even went back to crawling around as if he were a baby. As Aenys had troubled health, there were rumors that he had been fathered by a singer instead of Aegon. However, when Aenys bonded with his dragon Quicksilver, his health improved and the rumors faded away. As Visenya by then had not gotten pregnant yet, some believed she was barren and suggested to Aegon that he should take a new wife. Although many young women were presented to Aegon, the king refused to take another bride. Eventually, 11 years after the conquest, Queen Visenya announced her pregnancy and gave birth to Aegon's second son, Maegor, the next year. Aegon raised his firstborn son Aenys at King's Landing and took him with him on his progressions. Occasionally, he even let Aenys train with his Valyrian steel sword Blackfire. Lacking daughters, he married 15-year-old Aenys to a cousin, Lady Alyssa Valerian, the daughter of his master of ships. King's Landing initially lacked walls, and the likely reason is that the Targaryens believed no one would attack a city which housed dragons. However, when Aegon learned about a pirate fleet sacking Tall Trees Town in the Summer Isles, Aegon came to the realization that he and Visenya were not always in the city. As such, he ordered the construction of massive walls to be built around the city. Construction began in year 20 after conquest and was completed in 6 years. In year 33 after conquest, Aegon made his final progression throughout Westeros, during which he visited Winterfell. Afterwards, Aenys and his children would make progresses in Aegon's stead. Towards the end of his reign, Aegon decided that the Aegon Fort was not a suitable seat for a king. The structure was torn to the ground in year 35 after conquest. Aegon moved his family and court back to Dragonstone. Visenya was placed in charge of the building of the Red Keep, and it was rumored that Aegon had done this so that he would not have to suffer her presence on Dragonstone. In year 37 after conquest, at the age of 64 on Dragonstone, while telling his two eldest grandsons, Aegon and Viserys, the tales of his conquest at the Painted Table, Aegon died from a stroke. He was cremated on Dragonstone, and his funeral pyre was set aflame by Vhagar. Although Aegon's reign had largely been peaceful, many of his subjects desired to go back to the days of old, when there were still 7 kingdoms. Others wanted vengeance for the deaths of their loved ones in wars, and yet others saw the Targaryens as abominations. Because of this, the reigns of both Aenys and Maegor were tumultuous and filled with battles and chaos. Aenys First, offspring of Aegon and his beloved sister-wife Rhaenys, became the king after his father. He was tall like his father, but softer, slender and weedy. His crown was of gold, elaborate and much larger than his father's. Aenys was a dreamer and a dabbler in alchemy. He enjoyed court life just as Rhaenys had, and was a great patron of the arts. He was a good singer with a strong, sweet voice. Aenys could also make friends very easily and was very popular with women. He loved to ride, but his favorite mount was always his dragon Quicksilver. Yet Aenys hungered too much for approval and hesitated over decisions for fear of disappointing one side or another. Aenys was not close with his half-brother Maegor while growing up, since he was kept by his father's side in King's Landing, while Visenya and Maegor lived on Dragonstone. Aenys was trained by his father's Kingsguard, but lacked his brother's size and strength. He was at Highgarden when he learned of his father's death, and swiftly flew to Dragonstone for the funeral and coronation. After Aegon's cremation, Aenys gifted his brother Maegor with the sword Blackfire, traditionally held by kings, and admitted to all those assembled that he was not nearly the warrior his brother was. He even told Maegor that they would rule together. Aenys' ascension to the throne upon the death of his father Aegon led to many uprisings by lords who considered him weak. Aenys indeed proved to be weak and indecisive during these crises and was unable to effectively take action against them. Much of the responsibility fell to others. The first of these challenges was by a bandit outlaw known as Red Heron, who claimed to be a grandson of Heron the Black. The last of the 4 rebels to be killed, Heron was eventually cornered by Aenys' Hand of the King, Lord Alan Stokeworth. Heron killed Alan in the fighting, but was in turn killed by Alan's squire. On the Iron Islands, a man who claimed to be King Lodos Reborn was dispatched by Goran Greyjoy, following the death of Heron the Black decades ago. Lodos was crowned King of the Iron Islands with a driftwood crown by the drowned god's priests gathered at Naga's Bones on Old Wick. Back in the days when King Aegon I attacked the Iron Islands to put down several rebellious would-be kings, real Lodos turned to his god and called on the Krakens of the deep to drag down Aegon's warships. When the beasts failed to appear, Lodos filled his robes with stones and walked into the sea to take counsel with his father. Thousands followed him. Their corpses would wash up on the shores for years to come, except for Lodos' own body. After defeating false Lodos, Goran sent up the pickled head of the would-be king in a jar to King Aenys. In gratitude, Aenys granted Goran a favor. However, this would prove a regrettable decision, as Lord Goran used it to expel the Faith of the Seven from the Iron Islands, to the dismay of the rest of the realm, and to the anger of the Faith. The Vulture King rose in the Dornish marches and gathered many followers. The Martells mostly ignored the Vulture King, and while Princess Daria Martell assured King Aenys that they were doing everything they could to put the rebellion down, in the end it came down to the Marcher Lords to resolve the situation. Former Hand of the King, Lord Orys Baratheon, and the Marcher Lords, including Savage Sam Tarly, took part in the chase which became known as the Vulture Hunt. It is claimed that Savage Sam's Valyrian steel sword, Heartsbane, was red from hilt to point with the blood of the Dornish outlaws he had slain. In the Vale, Janos Arryn rose against his own brother, Lord Ronald Arryn. Lord Royce gathered forces and penned Janos up in the Eyrie, which caused the death of Ronald and his family. In the end, it was Prince Maegor Targaryen who flew up to the Eyrie on Balerion to resolve the situation, and had Janos and all his followers hanged. Maegor became a new Hand of the King as a reward. Another crisis arose in year 39 after Conquest, when Prince Maegor took a second wife while his first wife was still alive. This angered the Faith of the Seven and the High Septon. Aenys tried to placate the Faith by stripping Maegor of his office and sending him into exile to Pentos. Septon Myrmidon was appointed the new Hand of the King by Aenys as a way to try and appease the Faith of the Seven, though this could not completely fix matters. Aenys further enraged the Faith in year 41 after Conquest, when he wed his daughter Princess Rhaena to his son and heir, Prince Aegon. Aenys received a denunciation from the Faith addressed to King Abomination. The pious lords of the realm, and even the small folk who had once loved Aenys, turned against him. Myrmidon was expelled from the Faith for performing the incestuous wedding, and was torn apart by small folk 2 weeks after he performed the ceremony. Thus, the Faith militant uprising began. The warriors' sons, an order of Westerosi knights sworn to the Faith of the Seven, fortified the Sept of Remembrance on Rhaenys' Hill. Some poor fellows, Order of Westerosi, mostly small folk sworn to the Faith of the Seven, attempted to murder the king and his family, scaling the walls of the castle and slipping into the royal apartments. It was only thanks to Sir Raymond Baratheon, a knight of the Kingsguard, that the royal family survived. In the face of this, Aenys abandoned the city with his family and fled to the safety of Dragonstone, where Dowager Queen Visenya Targaryen, his aunt, counseled him to bring fire and blood to the Starry Sept and Sept of Remembrance. Aenys, incapable of making a firm decision, fell ill. By late year 41 after Conquest, most of the realm had turned against him. Thousands of poor fellows prowled the roads threatening and slaying any of the king's supporters, and dozens of lords took up arms against the Iron Throne. Aenys looked like a man of 60 even though he was only 35 years old, and maesters despaired of improving his condition. However, Dowager Queen Visenya took over his care, and Aenys briefly improved. But he suffered a collapse upon learning that his eldest son and daughter were besieged at Craighall. Aenys died in year 42 after Conquest, after only ruling for 5 years at the age of 35. The circumstances of Aenys' death are under much speculation. Some say he died from stress, others that he was killed by Dowager Queen Visenya Targaryen so she could place her son Maegor on the Iron Throne. Visenya was known as many things, but a woman of pity is not one of them, so many asked why she tended to the care of the nephew she despised. The Iron Throne, due to Visenya's actions after Aenys' death, passed to Aenys' half-brother Maegor instead of Aenys' eldest son, Aegon. So if you enjoy these videos, be sure to check out an online merchant who provided 2 House Stark pocket watches for the giveaway I am about to announce. Check out his online store, link in the description. He has got some great merchandise. In order to win one of those House Stark pocket watches, you get to hit the like button below and write your idea for the lore video about the known world of Song of Ice and Fire realm to be made on Scriva TV channel. The best 2 ideas picked by me will be implemented and the authors will each be rewarded with House Stark pocket watch. I shall contact the winners. Once again, be sure to check out 403 Style Store for the merchandise. Link in description. Thank you for watching. See ya!